Share with Diane at 6:30 in the church. Anyone is welcome. On Thursday, there will be Bible study at 7 p.m. in the church. If you can't join in person or would feel more comfortable, it is always accessible through Zoom. This week, we will begin to watch Season 2 of The Chosen. The next prayer circle will be Friday, April 16th at 7 p.m. in the church. We will be switching things up this prayer meeting, and instead of having a prayer circle, we will be having a prayer chair. For more information, please see Pastor Mark. On Sunday, May 2nd, Blaine Hill Fire Department will be holding a drive-through spaghetti luncheon. This is a fundraiser for Heather's family. If you are interested in making any additional baskets for the Chinese auction, please let us know. As this is a very difficult time for them, please keep them in your prayers. At this time, the loft and the lookout are now dismissed.
Okay, kids, you're out of here. So I'm the Mark that she was telling you to see about the prayer chair. A couple of things I want to talk about before I get to that, though. I got all kind of papers here. The fundraiser is May 2nd from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. That is it still drive-through only, or are they going to open up the fire hall? Do you know? It says drive-through. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway. Yeah, I wonder, did you hear me last night? Throw it at you. It's hard to eat spaghetti in the car. It'd be nice if they opened it up. We got to talk to them about that. But anyway, so that's from 1 to 5, $10 pre-sales. Do you know what they're going to be at the door? The tickets? Okay. Anyway, if you guys want to do the basket for the Chinese auction, see Ken or see Victoria, and they can coordinate that with you. And if anybody doesn't know where the Blaine Hill Fire Hall is, let me know. I'll let you know where it is. The prayer chair as opposed to prayer circle. We've been doing the prayer circle, which has kind of been just whatever's in your heart, you pray, and we decided we want to try something different. So we're going to be a little more intentional. How's the temperature in here? Is everybody okay? A little cold, a little hot? You turn it off? I'm in a coat. It's a little chilled up here for me, so it's unusual with the lights. I'll make sure everybody else is okay. Yeah, there it goes. All right. Now we're going to go, it's hot. Anyway, so the prayer chair, the way that works is everybody has an opportunity to sit in the chair, and then everybody lays hands on them and prays for them. Now, you can sit in the chair for somebody else or for yourself, but we want to be very targeted and specific, and we want to, for a while, we're going to do a prayer, very targeted, specific prayer for need, specific single need per person, and that's going to be a little bit different. But the basic rules of it still stay the same. We start at 7, we end at 8. I promise you no later. We'll be prompt on that. So that's on the 16th of this month, which is a Friday, always a Friday, 7 p.m. I guess before I get to that, I just want to say, those of you who came to Passover, thank you for coming. It was a really great event, I think, and everybody seemed to really like it. It was almost magical there, back at the Sunset Room again. And just so you know, we'll be there next year as well. I've already told them book it, so we're just going to be back there again next year. But it was it's a special time for us because it's the only time right now, and we're still looking at a way of fixing that. It's the only time we do communion. And the reason is once you've done it inside of a Passover and you understand that's how Jesus did it, it's hard to go back to crackers and grape juice again, I think. But anyway, we do want to come up with a way of doing communion more often than just that. But right now, that's it. It's a very special time. We had 61 people reserved, 57 people showed up, which was pretty remarkable, really, considering everything else that's going on. So thank you for all of you who braved it and came out, and I hope you were as blessed by it as we were. Now, as far as the next series, which is starting next week, we are actually doing all in on The Chosen. And if you guys haven't seen The Chosen yet, you have missed one of the greatest blessings of the modern Christian world. It really is. Season 1's available on YouTube, and they have an app you can view it for free. Season 2 launches today. For those of you who want to watch it today, we're going to watch it together Thursday night in our Bible study. And then what we do is, we did this with Season 1, we're going to break off and discuss a little bit afterwards, kind of talk about some things. It's kind of a fun time. But I'm also tying into it with the sermons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take something that happened in that episode and that kind of struck me, and I'm going to preach on that subject. So it's going to be an all-in tie-in. We're going to call it Walking with the Chosen. And the thing I love about The Chosen is it shows you Jesus through other people's eyes. And to me, it has been a really kind of revelatory thing, because it really kind of puts you there. And I want to kind of keep that going as much as I can. Let's start talking about how Jesus impacts human lives instead of just kind of a sterile view of it from a 30,000-foot view. I really want to start talking about how Jesus impacts your personal life. So that's going to kind of be the focus of Walking with the Chosen. But that's not where we are today. Today, we're going to be finishing up our series we've been on in Book of Revelation on the 7 churches. And I know some of you came here expecting an Easter service today. Yeah, you're not going to get that here. I don't know why. I really can't tell you why. It's just the way this schedule floated out. This is the last, and I just prayed about it and thought, I'm just going to keep with this. So we'll mention Jesus and the resurrection because we do every week, but this won't be a special Easter service for those of you who are expecting that. My apologies, but let's go ahead and finish this one up.
This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning.
So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself, and I didn't know I was lost.
So we are on the final week here, which is the Church of Laodicea. Now, those who've been with us, we've been going across the map. What happens in the book of Revelation, which is the very last book of the Bible, John, being instructed in a vision by an angel, starts writing a letter to each of the 7 churches that at one point in time he was kind of the head of. He was kind of, they didn't call him, but kind of a bishop, sort of a person in this area. And so he at one point was in charge of all these churches. He probably started several of them. And so he was instructed by God to write a letter to each one of them. And each one of them had issues, almost all of them. And we talked about how this is actually put in the Bible for us today because we have those issues too. And so last week we got to the one good church. The one you wanted to be was last week. That was the Church of Philadelphia. Small church with little power, but God was very pleased with. Right? And we want to say that's us, but we have some work to do to get there. But that's where I wanted to end the series, because that's kind of the high note. This is kind of going back to another church that's having some issues. And this particular verse in the Bible, which is Revelation 3, starting with verse 14, is interesting because it's something that I have preached on before, even though I don't normally preach on Revelation. I've mentioned this before, because this verse had a very profound impact on my life, which actually led to the foundation of Spirit Chapel. And I thought, man, I don't want to go through summer reruns already. We're only in April. I want to repeat a sermon I've already preached before. And so I thought, maybe I'll just go do something else, because, man, I even put it in my book. Those of you who have had the book, you know where this comes in. And actually, the Jesus Razor moment is Revelation 3:14. And so I thought, man, God, I don't know, I've been here before, been there, done that. I don't really know that I should do this again. But I'm thinking, how in the world can I come to what really was a foundation verse of Spirit Chapel? This broke the ground upon which the foundation was laid, which is why this church even exists here 8 years later. How can I do that without, how can I preach this sermon and not mention that? So for some of you, this is going to be a bit of a repeat. My apologies. But I'm hoping I'm going to pick it up enough to make it interesting and different a little bit so that you'll still get something out of today. I'm sure I don't want to just simply talk about the church, but that's my big wind-up. Anybody know who this is? Old-timers like me? Nobody know? Thank you. No one knew last night. Juan Mayer show. Okay, this is the big wind-up. So the big wind-up starts. I'm going to start because this is a personal story, because the Spirit Chapel became a very personal journey. So there's a personal story, and I'll start with Victoria and me. So you guys know, we met in an odd way. We met through the internet, and then we had this big relationship through email, not mail. I don't have patience for mail. But so we had that for a while. Then I flew to Kiev, and we had this really romantic week in Kiev, and then fought INS to get her here. And then she finally gets here. And so about 2-3 years into our marriage, I suddenly get laid off from the position I had been at for 12 years. This turned out to be a fairly good thing for me, because I got a nice little severance package, and we moved back east. We were in Texas at the time. We moved back east, and so I got a job starting in a little, I can't speak this morning, in defense contractor in Washington, D.C. So we moved to Northern Virginia, and this was a interesting time in our lives, because what had happened in the 3 years before this was Victoria and my red-hot romance had staled. It had gotten to the point where I think both of us at some point in time that last year before we moved probably had thought about divorce. We hadn't talked about it, but we thought about it. There wasn't anything really wrong, by the way. No one was hitting anybody. No, there was no substance abuse. There was no affair. It's just that both of us got married again. Victoria had been divorced before, and I'd been divorced twice, so I'm the record holder. But both of us had got married expecting something great out of marriage. And we thought, we're going to do it right this time. We're going to really marry the right person, because that's going to do marriage right, which isn't true, but somehow everybody thinks that. If I could just find the right person, everything will be fine. No such thing. But anyway, so what had happened was these two people who weren't, I guess, the right people started having issues because we started looking at each other and saying, well, this isn't what I thought my last and final marriage was going to be. And I think, honestly, if I hadn't been through a divorce before, might have pulled the cord on it because, this isn't what I wanted. And she was the same way because the person I thought I was marrying wasn't the person I married. And the person she thought she was marrying wasn't the person she married, because that's how marriage works. When we were in Kiev, everything was easy. For one thing, the money, the dollar for America dollar was so strong against the hryvnia in Ukraine. It was like I was there as a millionaire. The night we got engaged, we went to the best hotel in Kiev, and we ate in the top of their, the top roof. It was a French restaurant. We had Chateaubriand. We had cake. We had wine. $38 for the tip, before tip. $38. I'm like, it's like Monopoly money now, It's like everything's going great. And it's easy to have a great romance and that kind of thing. We took a cab everywhere, which embarrassed Victoria. We went to all the nice places. I mean, it was just great. It's so easy to have romance there. It's harder when you get back home. And you suddenly realize that we have to start working together on things. Because in Kiev, we didn't run any of the top 3 things that ruin a marriage. Number 1, for those of you who don't know, is money. Right? And not just the fact that you have money issues, like you don't have enough of it, but you view money differently. Victoria and I viewed money differently than each other. And we thought money was used for different purposes. And suddenly, something very important in your life, your partner's not thinking the same way about it than you are, and it causes issues. Number 2, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is family. Oh, it's not just family, it's culture. Now, we had that on steroids because we brought 2 cultures and 3 languages together, 4 if you count Yinzer. So we had a lot of things we had to work together on, but the cultures are different. And if you don't think cultures matter, just ask your parents or whomever you know that just got married what their first Christmas was like. It's like all of a sudden you realize, I'm marrying somebody from a different culture. What do you mean you're going to open presents on Christmas Eve? What are you, a troglodyte? Nobody does that. It's just Christmas morning, and you fight over these things because everything matters, right? Culture changes. And so we had that. And of course, the number 3 thing is considered sex, but it's not just that, it's also the pressure from the world. So we never dealt with any of those 3 things in Kiev. So we thought we knew each other. Hey, we'd written letters, spent all this time together, but we didn't know each other at all because we hadn't encountered number 1, 2, and 3, and there's like 10 of them that caused divorce. So our marriage kind of hit this stale point, and right then we moved. Not a good recipe for a marriage, by the way. Starting over in a new place, not always good. Because starting over is stressful. You kind of need to be on the same page, but we weren't. But what happened was we settled into what a lot of people settle into, because neither of us wanted to get divorced. We simply started living together separately. We didn't hate each other. In fact, the fighting stopped because we learned what we're allowed to fight about and what we weren't. And we just stayed away from those subjects. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't trying to have the person I imagined her to be. She wasn't either. We just simply were settling into what we have, and or we can make a life here. I could settle into some place and make a life, and that's where we were. Now, where was God in all this? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how really. We went to church every week, don't get me wrong. Always did that. I'm a preacher's kid. I know to do that. Even gave money to the church occasionally. But really, God wasn't a big part of any of this. I wouldn't have told you that. You got to get married. You have to have Christ in your life. And, to me, that just means have a unity candle at the service, put the candle on the mantle there. Now Christ is in our life. That's really not the way it works, but I didn't know that. And I've been a Christian for decades, and I didn't know what it meant to have Christ at the center of our life, because he wasn't. We didn't move to Washington, D.C. because God told us to. I simply looked at the map and said, well, if we're going to move back east, for my job, it'd probably be easier to get hired somewhere around Washington, D.C. Let's go there. And then we pray about it. If you don't want us to do it, God, stop us. Oh, I was able to rent this truck. I guess you didn't stop us. Let's go. That's kind of how my life was. Perfunctory. You ask, God, is this okay by you? Like that great scene from The Simpsons. I should have queued it up where Homer Simpson is sitting before all these donuts and he's kneeling in prayer. It says, God, if you want me to eat this donut, say nothing at all. Thy will be done. And he eats the donut, right? That's kind of how my prayer life was, right? That's how I would do it. So that's what happened. So we moved to Washington, D.C., and I get hired pretty quickly, which was really great. But even greater than that was my job took off like you can't believe. What happened was they hired me. I got hired in a small little startup that was in Suffolk, Virginia, but it was a defense contractor, and of course all the decision makers are in Washington, D.C. So the founder of the company was having to travel from Suffolk to Northern Virginia, D.C. area, like every day. He was tired of it. He just wanted to hire somebody he could teach to give the presentation in a good way so he could stay home. And so the CEO, who lived in D.C., said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so we met, and he really liked me. And one thing I do is a pretty good presentation. And so he really thought, oh, this guy can do it. He can take over for me. That's great. And the CEO said, absolutely, let's hire Mark. So they hired me. And then the CEO gave me a contract in Michigan to take me out of town. So the founder had to keep coming up to I don't even know why, but he allowed him to hire me even though he knew I wasn't going to do anything. He was going to keep the founder because he wanted the founder there, right? So I got this little tiny contract given to me for $64,000, and I don't know if you know anything about defense contracts, but that's like, that's nothing, $64,000. But I was given that to manage. My salary was more than that, but I was given it to manage, which made no sense at all. But it took me out of town, which made a lot of sense for this CEO. But what happened, which nobody saw coming, was God blessed me, and that contract went from $64,000 to $2.5 million in 3 months. Now, how did I do that? I don't know. I'm asking, how did I do that? Because I don't have any idea. I did nothing. I just showed up, and all of a sudden, boom. Everybody's looking at me like I'm some whiz kid. Oh my gosh, this guy took this contract and took it up to like that. And here's the other cool thing. I had all these bonuses and stuff in my contract, which this CEO thought he'd never have to pay, but they all kicked in. So suddenly I'm getting all kind of money coming our way. And I know in my heart that I haven't done anything to deserve this. It had to be God. I was enough of a Christian to know God was still there. And so I started seeing this stuff come in, and although I took credit for it, because that's what you do if you're a professional, you take credit because you want to get the next job. So I Chanticleered this baby. You know what Chanticleer is? That rooster that said that if he didn't crow, the sun wouldn't show up. That was me. I was Chanticleer. But I knew I didn't have anything to do with it. And Victoria, who knew me well, knew I didn't have anything to do with it. And both of us had a sudden thought. We need to start tithing. See, I didn't know a lot about the Bible as much as I should have, but there was this one verse in the Bible that I remembered because I remembered it from the old King James. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And I thought, I like the giveth part. I don't want the taketh part to come, right? So I'm figuring I'm going to protect this by giving some money to God, kind of a little protection money, because that's how God works, of course. And so I'm going to give him money so he doesn't take this away. And Victoria was on board. I said, we need to start tithing. We've never really tithed. I've given, but I've never really started tithing. We need to tithe. And she says, yes, we need to tithe. We need to protect our money. Now, tithe is 10%. It's actually really easy to do that math. You just simply move a decimal place when you write your check. It's real simple, right? So we sat down to write our first tithe check, and we looked at it. There's no way we can give this much money to the church. This is nuts. There's no way we can write a check like this. Now, I want you to think about this. God just dumped a pile of money that we never thought was coming, and then said, oh, you want 10% of it back? Oh, I can't afford that, God. I got to keep it all. It's like crazy what we do with God, but that's what we did. We can't afford that. And so we thought, we need to be good stewards. I think that's in the Bible somewhere. And so we should probably pay down some debt, save some money. We need to do some stuff with this. We will get around to 10%. But for right now, let's just give 5%, and we'll work our way up to 10. We'll be good Christians. 5% was still a lot. It was enough to get us a personal letter from the pastor of this megachurch wanting to know if we wanted to meet because he wanted to talk to us about joining the church. So, it was a lot of money, even that. And so we did that. A couple months go by, and all of a sudden, my contract comes to an end. This contract I had nothing to do with, it ended. I didn't have anything to do with that either. But now my company looks at me and says, well, that was cool what you did there. Do that again or we're going to have to let you go. Well, I didn't do it the first time. Right? I have no idea how to do this. And they said, yeah, we're going to let you go. They gave me 30 days. 30 days. I brought the company $2.5 million. 30 days, you're out. Okay. Well, I had no idea how to do it. In 30 days, I had nothing. But a miracle happened. They did not fire me. They did not let me go. Instead, they said, we've decided we're going to give you more time, but we're going to cut your salary. And they cut it in half. Now, I'm not real good with numbers. But that math, the coincidence of that math. By the way, that wasn't where they hired me. They didn't cut me back to where they originally hired me. That's what I expected to happen. It took me past that to exactly half. I thought, okay, we got this, and we should have tithed this much, and we tithed this much, and my salary now matches my tithe exactly. Oh, that can't be a coincidence. And we both looked at each other and looked at that moment and thought, this is almost creepy how perfectly aligned that was. Now, I'm not one of these people who says you have to tithe because tithe will make you rich, because I don't believe that. But there is a thing in Malachi where he says, test me in this and see if I don't rebuke the devourer for my name's sake. He says, if you give, I'll protect what you have. And so I'm thinking, okay, I had 50% of my income protected and the other half was taken by the devourer. It was clear to me. I'm not telling you this is true for your life. I'm not. I don't even know if this would happen in your life. But I know God's hand had been working in mine because it took me, even though I wasn't necessarily righteous at this time, and shook me until I go, okay, God has my attention. So we made a decision that day in our little tiny house on Liberty Bell Court in Virginia. Let's keep this exactly the way it is. Now, we can't make it on this salary, so I didn't know what we were doing, but let's just keep this amount exactly the same, and let's just keep giving. So now, for the first time in our lives, through the magic of God's intervention, we're tithing. And a little bit after that, we realized we can't make it here. I need to get a new job, and we need to go someplace cheaper. And again, I didn't pray about it. I'm not asking God, where do you want me to go? Which I really should have, because clearly he's trying to get my attention at this point. Instead, I said, Victoria, there are a lot of places cheaper than D.C. A lot of places cheaper than D.C. But there's only one I know, and that's Pittsburgh. I know how to go back there and stay away from the bad places, find the good places. I feel comfortable that we can make it in Pittsburgh. And we said, okay. So we packed up our truck and we moved to Pittsburgh. But what had happened was Victoria's heart and my heart, without our knowing it, had turned to the Lord. See, Jesus says that where your treasure is, your heart follows. It's always quoted the other way around. Always people say, well, your treasure, where your heart. No. He says, where your treasure goes, your heart follows. That's what he says. And what had happened was we had just put our treasure in God. And our hearts followed. And what else happened, without us even knowing it, was we started getting back together as a couple. Our marriage was getting fixed. Without us working on it, we didn't make any pledges, we didn't do anything, but all of a sudden, things changed between us. And we moved back to Pittsburgh without any idea what's going on. So suddenly I realized I better figure out what's going on with God. This God, he's really big and he's really powerful, and he's shaking my life up, and maybe I better figure out what he wants. And for the first time in my life, and I've been a Christian for decades, for the first time in my life, I started a real Bible study. I mean, I tried before, but this one was real. And I'm not going to go into it, I've talked about it before, but basically this Bible study took me a different place in the Bible every day and was completely Spirit-led. And I stayed there, this was what was really different, I stayed there in the Bible until I got to the place that I felt God was taking me. And then I would stop, and not before. And so the Bible started speaking to me for the first time in my life. And what I found every day for days and days and days was God was telling me, wait, through his word. Wait. Do you know how many verses in the Bible say, wait upon the Lord? There's a ton of them, and I ran into every one of them in my Bible studies. It was amazing. Our life was in total stasis at this point. My career was stalled, and I didn't know if I was going to have a job tomorrow. The house we were living in and we were paying rent on, our landlord hadn't paid any mortgage on. I'm away on business once, and Victoria hears a knocking at the door, and it's not a knocking, it's the sheriff putting up an eviction notice on our door. You guys got to get out. We can't get out. Well, it turns out they can't do that because we had a lease, and we were not in violation of it. So the bank's trying to get us out. We don't know how long that's going to take, so we don't know where we're going to live. And oh yeah, the church that we were belonging to at the time, that I was an elder in, suddenly wasn't meeting our needs. And we wanted to leave, and we didn't know why. So spiritually, professionally, personally, other than our marriage is real good, everything was in flux. So I'm like, God, what's going on? And every day I would just simply get, wait. He was really trying to get my attention. And I remember this one time I'm walking out because Victoria would watch me. I'd sit out there this little deck I built. This is my devotion partner. He was bored stiff because we'd play afterwards. And I'm sitting out there, and Victoria would watch me, and she'd see me coming in. She knew I was seeking the Lord, which was something new, and she was all excited about that. And this one time I'm walking in, she says, "Did God tell you anything?" I says, "Yes." She said, "What did he tell you?" He said to wait. "Did you tell him we're tired of waiting?" I said, "Yeah, he doesn't seem to care." And it's like, every day. Until this day. I was going to look up the actual date because I was keeping a journal. I forgot to do this. But suddenly, I'm bouncing around like I was doing, and I saw that God was taking me to Revelation. This is a chapter of the Bible that I always stayed out of. Because when I was younger in the 70s, there's this book called The Late Great Planet Earth, and all of Christendom got into end times, all this. I hated it. It just scared me. I didn't want to talk about it. So I stayed away from Revelation. But here we go. I could say the Bible was taking me, this Bible study took me into Revelation 3:14. I'll never forget this. So I started reading this part, this Church of Laodicea. And to the angel of the Church of Laodiceans, write this. These things says the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. This is Jesus. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. And I could wish that you were cold or hot. And the way this thing fell on my Bible, the Bible had time, that was the end of the page, time to turn the page. But I remember thinking, what's wrong with these people? Because that's what I tried to be my whole life. I tried to be that middle-range Christian. See, I was a preacher's kid, so people always had expectations of me. They always expected me to be good, right? It's tough being a preacher's kid. And so I didn't want to be that guy because that guy didn't have any friends. Because all the friends that I hung out with, they wanted to do things that weren't always good. They didn't want the preacher's kid along, right? So I try to downplay my Christianity in that situation. And my excuse for that was, well, if I'm going to witness to these people, I have to be able to hang around them, right? So I got to be able to hang with them. So I downplay that. But I didn't want to go fully cold because cold people ended up in hell. So I didn't want to be that either. I want to be someplace between, this kind of halfway Christian. Kind of perfectly, like Goldilocks' porridge. Perfectly just right. That's what I'm trying to be. Halfway Christian, just right. So I'm thinking, what's up with that? You would rather someone cold than that? This didn't make sense to me, this verse. I remember looking at that and going, that doesn't make sense. Why are you saying you'd rather me be cold than this? And then he goes on to the next part, and this is really kind of mind-blowing. He says, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew you out of my mouth. What does the word spew even mean? I mean, it almost sounds like a euphemism. Spew you, something like that. But no, I looked it up, because you can do these things on the internet now. This word, emeo, means to vomit with extreme force. And I know you're expecting me to talk about Easter eggs and something nice, and here I am talking about vomit. But listen, this is what the Bible says. This is literally what it says. It's like with extreme force. In other words, don't go for style, you go for distance. Jesus is saying, you don't make me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. You make me puke my guts out. It makes me sick to my stomach. I'm like, man, that is not what I expected the next verse to be. Because he's talking about me, and I know it. Like, I don't get it. And I'll never forget, because I put the Bible down, and I put my journal down, and I looked at it, and I said, Jesus, why are you so hard on halfway Christians? And my dog looked at me wondering what I'm talking about, because he's the only other person there. But I literally said it out loud, Jesus, why are you so hard on halfway Christians? And I did not expect an answer, but I got one. It came instantly. And I know that I freak people out sometimes when I talk about God speaking to me, and it doesn't happen very much. But here's how I describe it. It's a thought, right? Because I'm thinking, after I say it, I'm thinking. And what happened was this thought was different than my thought. It's like this light bulb, these bulbs here, they have a little yellow tint to them, And that's how my thoughts usually are. They seem bright, but they're really not. This was bright, and it was white. That's the best way I could describe it. I knew this wasn't me because I would have never thought this, ever. As soon as I said, Jesus, why are you so hard on halfway Christians? He said, because I didn't go halfway to the cross. That's why. He said, I'm all in for you. And you've been playing games for half a century. That's why. And I realized at that moment that everything had come together for this moment. I was at one of these points, and I know that God keeps calling to people and calling to people and calling to people, but I knew better. I was raised with this. I should have known better. I can't blame anybody but me for not knowing more. That I was playing around with Christianity for 40 years. And I realized this might be it right here. He's given me one more chance to take this for real. And so I thought, okay, I'm not sure exactly what that means. And he says this, he says, here's your problem. And then he goes on. You say I'm rich, you become wealthy, and I have need of nothing. Remember Virginia? I said, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you don't know that you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. Because what you had in Virginia was useless where you're going. What you thought was wealth was not wealth, it was depravity. Because you didn't think you needed me, even though I'm the one who blessed you with all that to begin with. You ran your life as though I was an afterthought. I'm tired of you being a halfway Christian. Are you in or not? And he goes on and he says, look, I'm counseling you to buy from me real gold, real wealth, things that's been refined. I'm going to give you white garments that you can be clothed, and the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed. I will anoint you with your eyes with eye salve, and then you'll finally be able to see. I am wanting to take you to the next level with me, and you want to keep playing games. What are you going to do? See, here's what I realized in that moment. That all my prayers, my whole life, had the wrong focus. Like, for example, we pray the prayer, deliver us from evil. If you ever pray the Lord's Prayer, that's part of it, you know, deliver us from evil. But what we mean by that is deliver me from the evil things that are going to hurt me. The evil stuff that isn't going to hurt me, let me have that. It's funny how we do that with God. I don't like this because I think it's hurting me. But all this other stuff that I know is kind of evil that I don't think you want to see, let me keep that. And Jesus says, I actually want to deliver you from all the evil. He didn't die to just deliver you from the things that are hurting you in your eyes, but to deliver you from all the things that are keeping you from him. The purpose of Jesus' resurrection was redemption. The purpose of redemption was to come back into God's presence, not just get the bad stuff knocked off us. And we miss that. We think Jesus died for our sins. Cool. I like that. And he says, no, I need to make you righteous so I can restore you to where you're supposed to be. That was the whole point of it. There's a very wise proverb in Proverbs 30. It says this, 2 things I'm going to ask of you, God. Keep falsehood and deceitful words far from me. Now watch this, because this is a parallel. Falsehood and deceitful. The way this is structured, the way Proverbs are usually structured, is they're setting up parallels. So he's saying, I want you to keep this from me. I want you to keep falsehood and deceitful things from me. And then he goes on to describe what gets put into those categories. Give me neither poverty nor wealth. See what he's saying? He's saying poverty is false, wealth is deceitful. I want you to keep them both from me. Ever pray that prayer? Please, dear God, don't let me get wealthy. I don't think many of us do. I never have. But then he goes on and says, why? He says, because if I'm given too much, I might deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I'm not given enough, I might have to steal, and that profanes your name. So please, Lord, don't let me have poverty and don't let me have riches, because either one of them can ruin me. If you remember the parable of the sower, Jesus teaches this very thing. The parable of the sower goes out the seed. We've talked about this all the time in this church, so I'm going to skip over all that. I'm going to get to the part where he's talking about the seed that falls among the thorn or weeds. He says, let me tell you what that is. He's telling his disciples, he's explaining it. This is what the parable of the sower means. When it's sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word. Cares of the world, poverty, deceitfulness of riches, wealth. both of those things will choke out the word. Either one of them. And if that happens, you bear no fruit. You know what happens if you don't bear fruit? And he's very clear about this. You get cut down and thrown into the fire. This is consistent throughout the scripture that Jesus came to deliver us from all evil. Something else became very apparent to me that I don't even want to admit in front of you all, because I'm supposed to be righteous. I'm a preacher. But, I'm not. I'm the preacher. I'm just not righteous. I fight, I struggle, just like you, right? And this was a very pivotal moment because I realized that my relationship with money paralleled my relationship with God exactly. Now, please hear what I'm saying. I'm not telling you if you tithe 5%, God's going to take away half your money. I don't even think God took away my money. I'm not telling you this is your story. I'm telling you this is mine. But I do know this, that when I was in charge of my money, God wasn't in charge of my heart. I promise you that. And my relationship with God exactly paralleled that. You'll see it. Things like this. Tithing is intentional. If you're going to tithe, you're going to plan it. You're going to think about it. It's intentional. Giving, which is what I did, that's careless. Whatever I had left over in my wallet, that's what I threw to God. He literally got the scraps off the table that he set for me. Right? So that's kind of how I treated God, though. I treated him carelessly. Tithing is your first fruits. Giving is leftovers. The very first time we see this is actually in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis. If you remember the Cain and Abel story, that they both give an offering to God. God accepts one and not the other. And then Cain gets so mad about it, he kills his brother for being righteous. But look at why. I never really understood that why. I always thought it was because I know Cain worked the field, and he brought him fruits and stuff. Where Abel, he was a shepherd. He brought him a lamb. I thought, well, that's why. God wants a good offering, not your loud, petty offering. But that's not why at all. It tells us right here in the scripture. He says, in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering. He just brought some stuff that was left over. Abel brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. See the difference? Abel was intentional. He gave God what came first. Cain gave God what was left over. God accepted Abel's offering not because it was sheep, because it was from his first of his heart. He put God first. Tithe comes in on your increase. Giving comes from excess. Whatever I have left over, God, is what I'll give you. And this is my life. This isn't just my money. This is my life. You know when I prayed at night? When I fell into bed on my back. Laying on my back in my bed. Do you know how many of my prayers never got to amen because I was asleep before I was finished? I didn't give God my best. I gave him whatever was left over. I'd go to church on Sundays, sometimes. I just lived my life, and I always thought that it was okay. I had this haphazard relationship with God. I didn't plan it. It wasn't important to me. I wouldn't have told you this, by the way, if you'd asked me in those days. I said, of course God's important. I would die for him. You won't even stay awake for him. How are you going to die for him? I was full of myself. I thought, I've got this. And here's the other thing that really, really just kind of, I'm embarrassed, but it's true. I looked at the money in my life as a measure of God's approval for my life. See, I was making more money than anybody in my family. So if any of them challenged me on anything, those who knew me best, I'm like, look around. God's blessing me. Doesn't seem to be blessing you. So guess who has his approval? I must be okay because God's blessing me. I actually would take God's own gifts to me and turn them against him. But that's actually not the way it's supposed to go. No wonder we're told in Luke when Jesus is talking about this, is you can't serve two masters. You're going to hate the one and love the other, or you're going to loyal to one and despise the other. You can't serve God and mammon being the worldly God, which is usually translated money. That's what he said. This is an Easter Sunday, so let me bring this to Easter for a second. Jesus was crucified between two thieves. Now, symbolically, you can cut this a lot of ways, but I'm telling you, the thief on one side is poverty, and the thief on the other side is riches. Because if you focus on either one of those in your life, your focus is not on Jesus. And this is what he tells us. the parable of the sower. This is what will take you away from me. Your focus isn't on me anymore. It's on here or here. And he knows the pull of this, which is why he asks for the first fruits. Now, what happened accidentally was through all of this, I started giving first fruits to God. I didn't mean to, but I did. And when I did, my heart turned to him. And when my heart turned to him, he was able to reach me for the first time, really honestly. I mean, we'd had moments, God, me, in my life. I'm not saying I lived like the son in the parable of the prodigal son. I wasn't that bad most of the time. But I knew I was working on divorce number 3, and that's not God's fault. That was mine. I was the same selfish person in my third marriage that I was in my first. Go figure. Because I had never changed. God hadn't changed me. And he had never changed me because I was a halfway Christian. I never went all in for him like he went all in for me. Jesus goes on in this verse in Revelation and says this, and this was really comforting to me. He says, listen, I rebuke those I love. Because he hit me pretty hard that day sitting on that deck. I'll never forget when he said, because I'm all in for you, I didn't go halfway to the cross. I started crying. And when I read the next verses and I realized that was me, I continued crying. And then it came to this verse. He says, listen, I rebuke those I love. I love you. That's why I'm telling this right now. I'm telling this because I love you. I'm telling this because I want you with me. What I'm asking is, do you want to be with me? This is like one of the biggest pivotal moments. Because I said through tears, I don't even know what this means, God. But okay, I'm all in. I don't know what that means. And it would be months before God would reveal it to me that we'd be starting a church that I would have never done before 2013, believe me. Because God said, are you all in or not? Now, I can't tell you that, oh my goodness, I've had so much more fun with Spirit Chapel than I had when I had money in Virginia. You know, I'm not going to tell you that. We don't go out nearly as much as we used to. I had 2 cars back then. It was crazy, but I would rather be doing this. And especially in these days when things are so crazy in the world. You know, I was asked about this. What are you going to do? I'm going to keep doing this. Because this touches the eternal. You understand, it's not what happens to the United States that matters. It's what happens to the people here. You're the treasure of God. It's what happens to our hearts. So what he's telling us is, I'm coming to you. I want you to dine with me. I want you to sit with me on my throne, right next to my Father. This is why I'm telling you this. But you have to turn your heart to me. Are you in or not? Let him who has an ear to hear. Would you all please pray with me? Heavenly Father, I thank you that you are all in. And you didn't go halfway to the cross. And you came to save us from everything. Give us the wisdom, O Lord, to take you up on your so generous offer and walk with you